Welcome back to Cess Talk Sports, BY's Poly Sports Tea Time Podcast, where sports, race, politics, and power collide like a no call in the paint. It's your favorite auntie and Uncle Tennessee Cess in the building with my co-host, never, ever, ever gonna bite her tongue, Political Lil. And fam, today we not just talking hoops, we talking systems. What's up, Lil?
What's going on there?
All right, this episode, y'all, we digging deep into the playbook of control using the lens of Michael Parenti's make-believe media. Yeah, we said it. Sports ain't just games. Entertainment ain't just vibes. It's propaganda with a smile, designed to keep the power structure comfy while the rest of us run full court press just trying to be seen. Parenti breaks it all the way down. Media is a machine built to reinforce who gets to win, who gets to speak, and who gets erased. And sports, oh, they right in the mix. Dressed up in jerseys and highlight reels, but carrying the weight of capitalism, imperialism, and social control. Let's bring that home to the WNBA. Women's basketball is the battlefield. You see the tension. Who the media chooses to crown, who they try to clown, and who they ignore altogether. It's not just about buckets, it's about branding, power, and perception. Look at what's happening with Angel Reese and Asia Wilson. Two black women dominating on the court, yet constantly having to fight for respect that should be automatic. Why? Because in a league already fighting for mainstream shine, race and gender still decide whose story gets told loud and whose gets silenced. This ain't just a game, fam. This is a message. And today, we decoding every word of it. Stay tapped in.
And this is where Angel Reese comes in. She's bold, she's confident, and she refuses to conform to an image that the sport industry wants to promote. When she dominates on the court, she's not just playing basketball. She's challenging the racial and gender norms that sport entertainment thrives on. And because of that, she's been vilified in ways that her white counterparts simply haven't. Because at its core, the sports industry is about control. Who gets to be the face of the league? Who gets the big endorsement? And who gets labeled as controversial? And it's not just Angel Reese. We see this dynamic with Aja Wilson as well. Despite being one of the most dominant players in the game, the media and the league itself have historically undervalued black women. And when they refuse to shrink themselves, they become a threat to the system. And that system, it mirrors what Parenti describes in make-believe media, where certain narratives are manufactured and controlled, shaping public perception in ways that benefit those already in power. Sports are supposed to be about competition and excellence, but they're about image, branding, and control. And if you don't fit the mold, the system will push you back.
And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. We're breaking down how the politics of control operate in sports entertainment, how media narratives are manipulated, and what this means for the future of women's basketball. Y'all stay locked in because we're just getting started. All right, now that we laid the groundwork with Michael Parenti's breakdown, how media ain't just for laughs, but a straight up tool of control, let's really unpack how sports play their role in that propaganda game. See, Parenti ain't whispering. He's straight up saying entertainment's job is to keep folks distracted, pacified, and locked into the power structures that already run the show. In sports play that part flawlessly. Sports ain't just about scores and trophies. They're a whole mirror for how society decides who gets to shine and who gets shoved to the sidelines. That same energy rolls deep in women's basketball. Take a real look at the media treatment of someone like Angel Reese. She's unapologetic. She's elite. She celebrates how she wants, when she wants, but instead of being uplifted, she's painted as too much, defiant, aggressive, unruly. This ain't just a hot take. That's the system working exactly how it was designed. The propaganda machine stays grinding, especially when it comes to confident, powerful black women. The message is loud and clear. If you don't fit the box, they'll try to erase you or turn you into a problem. And let's be real, these narratives ain't just talk. They shape real opportunities. They impact endorsement deals. They influence what stories get told, how players get marketed, and who gets center stage in the league. This is bigger than basketball. This is about how power moves in plain sight and the media just the jersey it wears. Welcome to the real game, fam. And we calling it out play by play.
And let's talk about how black excellence is deliberately downplayed in women's basketball. Take Aja Wilson, one of the most decorated players in the game. Instead of recognizing her skill, leadership, and work ethic, the media falls back on a racial stereotype. They frame her dominance as a result of natural athleticism rather than the grit, training, and intelligence that actually makes her great. This is a deliberate strategy to diminish the accomplishment of black athletes. If Aja Wilson's success is framed as innate rather than earned, then it strips away her agency. It reinforces the false ideal that black athletes rely on their bodies, while white athletes succeed through intelligence, discipline, and hard work. And we see the contrast in how white athletes are portrayed. They're often described as hard workers, high IQ, and fundamentally sound, even when they aren't the most dominant on the court. The media elevates them as role models, embodying the ideal that femininity, professionalism, and sportsmanship in a way that black women rarely get to benefit from.
And this right here, fam, this is where sports become a straight up weapon of control. A stage that don't just crown champions, but tells us who's allowed to be great, who gets respected, who gets praised, and who gets policed. This ain't just about one player. It's about a system that sends loud messages with subtle moves. It's about how society constantly tries to rewrite the story of black women in sports. Whether it's hoops, tennis, track, or beyond, the message stays the same. If you're black, brilliant, bold, and unapologetic, you're a threat, not a role model. Because let's keep it a buck. White excellence gets painted as earned, strategic, inspirational. But black excellence, that's either natural, so not worthy of celebration, or aggressive, so it needs to be contained. That's the media playbook. That's exactly the kind of propaganda Michael Parenti was warning us about in make believe media. Narrative designed to maintain power by controlling the lens. So the question ain't just, why do they do this? The real question is, how do we break the cycle? How do we shift the narrative, reclaim the mic, and demand the kind of representation black women athletes deserve? Now let's get into one of the coldest tactics the media uses to keep that control. Backlash. When black athletes step outside the box, they're given the system doesn't just flinch. It retaliates. And if you need a masterclass on that, look no further than Angel Reese. Angel came into the game with all the smoke, dominant, confident, and fully herself. She didn't ask for permission to shine, and she damn sure didn't apologize for her greatness. And what did the media do? Tried to flip the whole vibe. They couldn't handle her truth, so they tried to drag her name. See, Angel ain't just a baller, she's a disruptor. She challenges the script. She refuses to dim her light or code switch for comfort. She wears her culture, her confidence, her crown, loud. And that right there, that's what scares folks who built their power on keeping black women small. But guess what? Angel Reese ain't shrinking, and neither are we. Let's keep going, fam. The truth don't stop here.
And that's why she faced such intense backlash. It wasn't just about her game. It was about the sports industry attempt to correct what it saw as a deviation from the expected order. The criticism was never really about trash talk of competitiveness. It was about control. This is an ideology correction in action. The system reacts swiftly when a black athlete steps out of the box they've been placed in. The goal isn't just to criticize Reese, it's to send a message to all black athletes about what happens when you refuse to conform. And then we have Aja Wilson, who has dominated the WNBA at every level, MVPs, championship, record-breaking performances. But what do we see in the media? A pattern of erasure and downplaying her dominance.
But that's because media representation isn't just about skill, it's about politics. Instead of giving Asia the full coverage and respect she deserves, sports media redirects attention to white players like Caitlin Clark. Let's be clear, Clark's talented, but the media elevates her in a way that conveniently appeals to a conservative mainstream audience. They market her as the face of women's basketball while sidestepping the black players who have built the foundation of the league's success. This is textbook ideological control. The media picks and chooses who to censor to reinforce racial hierarchies, ensuring that black excellence is always conditional and white success is universal.
And this ties directly into the capitalistic machine behind women's sports. With the rise of NIL, name, image, likeness deals, we're seeing black women like Reese take control of their own economic power in ways that disrupt the system. That's a major shift. Before NIL, the NCAA and corporate sponsors controlled everything, deciding who got visibility, who got endorsements, and who profited from their image. Now players like Reese are flipping the script, using their own platforms to build wealth and independence. And that's exactly why the media narrative has worked so hard to discredit her. Because NIL represents a challenge to traditional power structures. Black athletes making money on their own terms means less control for the system.
And that's exactly what Michael Parenti was warning us about. Media ain't just background noise, it's the soundtrack to the system. It's how economic and social order gets protected, polished, and played on repeat. Every time someone dares to disrupt that order, someone like Angel Reese, who refuses to fold, fade, or fit into the respectable box, the system pushes back hard. That backlash, that's not random, that's control. So now the real question is, What's next? How do athletes keep resisting? How do they reclaim the narrative, own their power, and rewrite the rules? Let's talk about one of the sneakiest plays in the propaganda game, how the media shapes what we believe on purpose, parentulated all out in make believe media. Entertainment ain't just entertainment, it's a tool, a weapon, a whole machine built to steer public opinion and protect the system. Because let's be clear, the media doesn't just report on sports, it curates them. It builds heroes, it builds villains. It decides who gets the spotlight and who gets silenced. And while they're spinning those stories, they're also keeping us distracted from real power dynamics at play. This strategy, the sports industry runs it to perfection. They don't want to talk systemic inequity. They rather hype up personal drama. They'll zero in on attitude, body language, swagger, anything to shift the convo away from the deeper truth. And if you're looking for a textbook example, just look at what's happening again with Angel Reese. She's not controversial because of her game. She's controversial because she embodies a kind of unapologetic black confidence that doesn't bow down, doesn't code switch, and doesn't seek approval. So what does the media do? They fixate on the personality, her defiance, her energy, her cultural expression, instead of addressing the real issue, why women's sports still undervalue, underpay, and underrepresent players like her. It's not just lazy coverage, it's intentional. It's how the system keeps spinning. But we see through it. And we're talking about it loud and clear.
Exactly. Instead of having a real discussion about why black women are underpaid, overlooked, and over-policed in sports, the media spins it into a story of attitude, sportsmanship, and likability. And that's where the myth of the black inferiority comes into play. When a black woman dominates, they don't just let her be great. They have to attach a narrative, a negative narrative to it. They want the public to see arrogance instead of confidence, disrespect instead of passion, and aggression instead of competitiveness. At the same time, they elevate white athletes as perfect contrast. That brings us to Angel Wilson, the most disrespected superstar in basketball today. The attempts to erase Aja's dominance is one of the clearest examples of media control. She's got 3 MVPs, 2 championships, multiple Defensive Player of the Year awards, and she's been the face of the WNBA for years. Yet when Caitlin Clark entered the league, the media immediately started pushing the narrative that Clark is somehow on Wilson's level. And let's put this in perspective. Clark has only been in the WNBA for a year. Aja has been dominating almost a decade. But look at how they've been treated.
Let's talk about what's really going on here. Because this ain't just about hoops. It's about who gets to matter and who gets marketed. Caitlin Clark got her jersey retired just 8 months after leaving Iowa. Meanwhile, Angel Wilson, an NCAA champ, 2-time WNBA MVP, and one of the greatest to ever do it, had to wait years to get her jersey lifted in South Carolina. This ain't oversight, that's agenda. And it don't stop there. Let's talk Nike. The rollout for Caitlin Clark's signature shoe. They didn't just push her, they strategically positioned Angel Wilson right next to her. Why? Because they know Clark doesn't move culture in black spaces like that. So they insert Asia, a player who's earned her spot and built her legacy, to give Clark instant credibility with an audience she hasn't connected with. That's not collaboration, that's co-optation. It's a classic move. Take the cool, the influence, the flavor black athletes naturally bring and use it to prop up the new face they really want to push. Not because she's better, not because she's more accomplished, but because she fits the narrative. She's safe, she's sellable, she's already been chosen. This is how the media and marketing machines maintain control. They selectively uplift and erase. They decide who gets fast-tracked to legend status and who has to fight for every ounce of recognition. It's about race, it's about marketability, and it's about power. But let's zoom out, because this ain't just about Caitlin versus Asia or Angel Reese getting dragged for showing emotion. This is the culture war playing out through women's basketball. What we're witnessing is bigger than the court. It's about who gets to be seen, who gets to be loved, and who gets to be paid. It's about a system that still expects black women to carry the weight, bring the ratings, set the trends, and then sit quietly while others cash in. That's why this moment matters. That's why women's basketball is a front line for resistance right now. Because every time a player like Angel Reese or Asia Wilson refuses to shrink, refuses to apologize, refuses to play nice with the script, they're breaking the system's grip. And we're going to keep calling it out, because if we don't, the erasure, the disrespect, and the performative praise will still just keep cycling. And we're not here for that. We're here for truth, for equity, and for every black woman who's ever had to prove what she already earned.
Exactly. Players like Reese and Aja aren't just winning games. They're redefining what success looks like for the black woman in sports. They're owning their identities, embracing their power, and demanding respect on their own terms. And that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially the sports industry, which has always been designed to keep Black athletes in a certain box. That's the real tension here. The more these women break out of that box, the more pushback they face. The industry wants them to be grateful, silent, and marketable in ways that serves the system. But what do they do instead? They speak out. They show up as their full, unapologetic selves, and they win. And that brings us to the political side of this conversation, because we can't ignore the role that MAGA era politics plays in all of this. The rise of mega politics has intensified the effort to control sports narratives. We see it with the way certain athletes are propped up as symbols of American exceptionalism, while others are demonized for being too political or too outspoken. And let's be real, this isn't about basketball. It's about who gets to have power, whose voice gets amplified, and whose success is seen as a threat. MAGA culture thrives on nostalgia, on the ideal that things were better before people like Angel Reese, Aja Wilson, and other Black women in sports started demanding their due. And that's why counter narratives are so important. The mainstream media will try to rewrite history in real time. They'll try to make it seem like Black excellence isn't happening right in front of us. But we see it, we recognize it, and we're going to keep on talking about it. That's the power of owning our own narrative, whether it's through independent media, social media, or just having conversations out loud.
All right, so let's get into the real, because this ain't just commentary. This is call to action. We've been breaking down how sports mirror the politics of control, and now it's time to flip the script and talk about what resistance looks like. What does it mean for Black athletes, especially Black women, to reclaim their narratives and own their futures in a system built to silence and reshape them? Let's be real. When you look at players like Angel Reese and Aja Wilson, you're not just watching stars on the court, you're witnessing a culture shift. These women are navigating a system that loves their game but hates when they speak truth. The media doesn't just report on them, it curates them. It tells you when they're marketable and when they're too much. That's not just branding, that's politics, that's control. So here's your playbook. First, watch the language. Pay attention to how the media talks about Black athletes. Who gets called a leader and who gets labeled difficult? Who gets to celebrate and who gets told to be humble? Once you see the patterns, you'll never unsee them. Second, support independent platforms that don't play by the rules. Platforms like Cess Talk Sports, BY's Poly Sports, and others that tell the full story. We ain't here to water it down or fit into the mainstream boxes. We're here to build new ones. We center Black voices, celebrate Black brilliance, and call out what the mainstream avoids. Third, use your voice. When you see the media twisted narratives, call it out. Share clips to highlight excellence. Correct the narrative in real time. Retweet the truth. Support the athletes, buy the merch, show up to the games, and back the brands that back them. And lastly, educate. Talk to your folks about what's really going on. Move those combos out of the group chats and into the streets, classrooms, timelines, and tables. These aren't just sports combos, they're cultural, political, and generational. Let's bring it home. Michael Parenti said it best. Entertainment media is not just about selling tickets, it's about selling ideology. And sports, they're a part of that package. The media doesn't just cover games, it constructs legacies. It props some up, tears others down, and tells us who matters. That's why Angel Reese matters. She's not just a baller, she's a disruptor. Her presence, her power, her refusal to dim her light forces the system to react, and that reaction, that's fear. That's a system uncomfortable with a young Black woman who owns her greatness without apology. And Aja Wilson, she's not just the most dominant player in women's basketball, she's a standard. But even with all her accolades, she's still fighting for the respect she's already earned. That's not just shade, that's a calculated effort to downplay Black excellence when it can't be ignored. See, this ain't about who can hoop. We already know the answer to that. This is about who controls the story, who's allowed to be legendary, and who's forced to prove it over and over again. So to all the real ones listening, you got the mic now. Like, comment, subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear the truth behind the headlines. This ain't just about sports. It's about power. It's about truth. And it's about telling our own damn stories. This has been a Cess Talk Sports BY's Poly Sports Tea Time podcast, brought to you by your favorite auntie with Uncle Tennessee Cess and my brilliant co-host Political Lil. Y'all keep watching, keep questioning, keep pushing. Stay tuned. Talk soon, y'all. We out.